I think that I've got perhaps the solution to the anxiety that we're all feeling about the upcoming changes to the Disneyland Resort. The topic of the day lately at the Disneyland parks has been about change. Actually, it's not really just today or recently. It's been happening now for a couple of years. A lot of talk about changes being made to Disneyland, and there's been a lot of discussion going back and forth on either side of the argument. But the last couple of weeks, we've seen these two sides of the argument colliding with a lot of force. Maybe I should be speaking personally, I don't know. But for me, this particular situation, the Star Wars Land and Rivers of America situation and the future change has been a difficult one for me. You see, I love Disneyland goats. I love the Rivers of America and the Mark Twain and the Columbia and Tom Sawyer's Island. I mean, these are some of my most very favorite things at Disneyland, things that I love above all others. But the thing is that I also love Star Wars above all things. Just like Disneyland is part of your childhoods, Star Wars is part of mine. I am part of the generation that experienced the Star Wars phenomenon firsthand. I went to the movies. I saw them in the theaters. I got the very first VHS tapes. I got the very first box set. They didn't even have box sets back then. Boy, Lucas innovated a lot of stuff, you guys. That's just hitting me right now. But I collected. I obsessed. I read. I studied. I mean, I was all about Star Wars as a kid, and it's a part of me in such a way that only people who well, I shouldn't say only, but I mean, it's special. It's special to me. And I know a lot of you share my feelings as well. So what does someone like me, like a lot of you do when two things that you love are about to collide and sort of cannibalize each other? Somebody is going to get hurt. I am 100% behind Star Wars Land. I cannot believe that this is going to happen in my lifetime, that I'm going to get to walk through, to live in, to experience a Star Wars environment, a universe, complete, as I know that Disneyland will make it so. It's going to be a complete and total experience. Forget Season of the Force, forget Star Tours, that they're just practicing. Star Wars Land is going to be an epic and monumental achievement in Imagineering. But we're losing Big Thunder Ranch. We're losing the goats. Now, I know goats versus Star Wars doesn't seem like a very complicated argument, but I mean, you guys know what I mean. I almost cried. We went to the last running of the goats on Saturday, and I almost cried. I love them goats. And what about the river? The river is going to be changed. It's going to be changed. A river that Walt designed himself. Now, before you say it, I know we're not losing the Mark Twain permanently. We're not losing the Rivers of America permanently, or the Columbia, or Tom Sawyer's Island, or the canoes. I get that. But 12 to 18 months is a significant amount of time. It's enough to scar me. It's going to leave a mark, okay? So the question is, how do we reconcile this, Fresh Baked? How do we get over our fear of change? How do we get over our fear of losing something in the process? Even when the thing that we're getting is good, is probably better. The answer, I think, is in a simple thought experiment that I referenced a few weeks ago when we were on the Disneyland Railroad. And as a professed Disneyland purist, it's something that's helped me get over the idea of change at Disneyland. What I do, and what I want you to try to do, if you're like me, try to imagine Disneyland in 100 years, or even 200 years. Try to imagine what Disneyland would look like in the future, that far ahead. And then ask yourself, is it my expectation? Is it logical to assume that the park will be exactly the same as it is today in 100 years or 200 years? Will the park look the same in 100 years? Do you want it to look the same in 100 years? A perfect example is Autopia. I love Autopia. I know some people have a hard time believing that because a lot of people think Autopia just plain sucks. But I love Autopia. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I am a Disneyland purist. I mean, I get that it's not exactly tomorrow. It's not a very futuristic ride. But then again, nothing in Tomorrowland is anyway. They're loud. They should be electric. And the land that it takes to occupy this attraction is enormous. And you could fit who knows what in there. But having said that, I don't want Autopia to change at all. Not at all. I'm happy with it just like it is. Part of that is that it's an original. It's a Walt creation. It's an OG attraction. But in a bigger sense, because I don't think it's fair to keep hanging your hat on the what would Walt do kind of, mantra that we used to hear a lot of. It's kind of a crutch that we use to put off, to stave off change. But for me, the reason it isn't a Walt thing for me more than it just feels like it is the essence of Disneyland. The trees and the sound and the smell and the views that you get from the monorail and the train. That is Disneyland to me. And that's what I don't want to change, is the core feeling that I get when I go to Disneyland. But in 200 years, I can accept the fact that Autopia will be different than it is today. In 200 years, I accept the fact that maybe they won't be gas-powered. You know what I mean? Like, I can accept that. As a matter of fact, I can even accept that in 100 years or 200 years, the Autopia won't even exist. That it will be gone completely. And if I can accept that it can be gone in 200 years, I can accept that it'll be gone in 100 years. Or even 50. Or maybe even 20. Or maybe even in my lifetime. Once you accept the fact that it can and will be gone, it's just a question of time now. When is it okay for you for it to be gone? And the key word in this thought experiment that you may or may not have picked up on is acceptance. And this is not an idle exercise, Fresh Baked. This is not something that I'm intending to do just for fun. This is a legit and practical exercise that you can use across all manner of life. I myself personally am a much happier person today than I was 10 or 15 years ago. Incredibly so. And that is because I learned to accept things. And actually, that term, acceptance, gets me through my most difficult Disneyland times. Acceptance of the crowds, acceptance of the cost, acceptance of, rude people, or whatever that you might experience at the park. If you could just accept and move on, life is bliss. It's pretty great. So there you go, Fresh Baked. I want to take a moment to think about something that you're feeling anxiety about at Disneyland in terms of the change. The goats. I mean, do you feel anxiety about losing the goats? Are you feeling sad about losing the goats? Well, take a minute and think, in 100 years, do you believe that the goats would still be there, that the ranch would still be there? If not, then you can believe that it'll be gone in 50 or 20 or 5 or even today. Today is the 10th of January, and the goats are no longer at Disneyland. So let's start a discussion on this, Fresh Baked. Let's get a dialogue going. Even if it's just for fun, in this case for the Disneyland thing, tell me what you think Disneyland is going to look like in 100 years. Pick a land, an attraction, and you tell me, what do you think Big Thunder Railroad will look like in 100 years? Once we do this and we get comfortable with this, we can begin the second part of this conversation, which has more to do with change that has already occurred at Disneyland and that we've accepted whether we know it or not. All right, next time, Fresh Baked. Thanks for watching. We've got lots more videos for you to see, so grab a churro and check out our Secrets in History videos or maybe our ride-throughs. Or you can just watch all of our weekly trip reports and have your mind blown by how much fun we're having. It truly is the best of Disney Baked Fresh Daily. Oh, and don't forget, you can support Fresh Baked through our Patreon campaign, linked below. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Fresh Baked!